We have a truly unusual account to delve into today. A former operative, someone from inside the private security world, has come forward.
Yeah, and with some pretty significant allegations, we're going to be digging into an audio recording.
In this recording, he details what he says is a nationwide program. It supposedly involves organized gang stalking,
Right, and also this mind control technology he calls voice to skull.
voice to skull, and large-scale social engineering, too. It's quite a claim.
So our goal here in this deep dive is really to understand what he's claiming in this recording. Just lay it out.
Exactly. We need to look at the alleged methods, what he thinks the motives are, the scale he talks about.
Based only on what he says in the recording. We're here to unpack his narrative, basically. Pinpoint the key takeaways from his testimony.
And it's really vital for you, listening, to keep in mind the source here.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive, it rests on what this one individual says.
We're presenting the information just as he gave it. We haven't independently verified any of this. Our aim is just to understand the story he's telling.
Okay, so who is this person? He identifies himself as 39 years old, a former employee of security industry specialists, SIS.
SIS, right. They're headquartered down in Culver City, California, but they have a big operation up in Seattle.
And he mentions having a background in anthropology and sociology. He seems to think that's relevant, that it gives him a sort of lens for intelligence and security work.
Interesting background. Okay, so let's start where he starts. He's 39 now,
Yep.
had an early interest in the military.
And then after 9/11, he says he joined SIS. He apparently had some connections in military intelligence
Oh, okay.
and saw the private security industry booming, and was drawn to that.
Makes sense for the time. So he starts out how?
Well, he recounts beginning in a sort of typical entry-level security guard role. Pretty standard stuff.
And then worked his way up?
Yeah, progressed within SIS, moved into executive protection, then eventually threat assessment, risk management, mostly for their VIP clients.
Okay, so he's moving up in the company. But here's where his story takes a pretty sharp turn, right?
Exactly. He says, while doing this work, he became aware of something else. He calls it a social engineering program.
And an R&D program, too.
Yes, and
Right.
related R&D. He specifically points the finger at SIS and their clients. Amazon in Seattle gets a particular mention.
Wow. Okay, so what was it that first, tipped him off or made him concerned? What raised the red flags?
Well, according to him, his alarm really grew when he started to realize this program wasn't just targeting, external people. He alleges it extended inside SIS to employees and also to the homeless population in Seattle, specifically those in the ESC facilities.
Dantan Emergency Services Center.
Yes. And ultimately, he claims he found out this whole thing was actually being rolled out against the general population nationwide.
So the internal aspect affecting colleagues and vulnerable groups locally, that seems to have been the key catalyst for him.
That's what it sounds like. That realization really seemed to intensify his outrage, as he put it.
Okay, let's try and get our heads around the technology and the tactics he's actually describing here. He uses some terms that might be unfamiliar. Voice to skull.
Voice to skull, hive mind, behavior modification technology.
And he says these are all frequency-based, directed at people to, well, control them.
That's the claim. He says they're directed at individuals to control thoughts, actions, frequency-based manipulation.
How would that even work, theoretically?
He details this alleged use against the general population in Seattle first. People from all walks of life, upper classes included.
And without their knowledge.
Completely without their knowledge or consent, according to him. He suggests it works through manipulating electromagnetic frequencies that target the human brain.
And then there's the other side of it, the gang stalking tactics. This runs alongside the tech.
Yes, used in conjunction with it. He describes it as organized, systematic stalking. Things like career sabotage.
Reputation attacks, character assassination within communities.
Exactly. And isolating the target, cutting them off from family, friends, their whole support network. It sounds like a multi-pronged attack.
Coordinated effort, definitely. He also brings up something quite disturbing about mental health diagnoses.
Yeah, that's a really worrying element. He alleges that diagnoses like schizophrenia are, exploited, used strategically
How so?
to discredit the targets, to make them seem unstable, unreliable, and, he claims, this is used to strip them of their rights.
Creating a kind of legal loophole if someone's deemed mentally unfit.
Precisely. A way for the program to operate without scrutiny under the guise of mental health issues.
Now, he's clear about his own involvement, isn't he? He says he didn't directly do the gang stalking.
Correct. He explicitly states he never participated directly in those activities.
Right.
But he acknowledges getting training, standard surveillance, counter-surveillance techniques while at SIS.
And he sees how that training applies directly to these organized stalking methods.
Right. So not a direct participant, but he claims he understands the playbook, so to speak, because of his background and training. Okay, so who does he say gets targeted? Who are these TI's targeted individuals? He paints a bit of a profile.
Yeah, he does. He often describes them as highly intelligent, but also often socially isolated. Maybe they don't have a lot of money or strong family ties, few friends, that kind of picture.
What else? Any common interests or beliefs?
He points to an interest in what he calls alternative research.
Which means?
Well, he clarifies that can include things often labeled conspiracy theories, digging into events like 9/11. Also an interest in technology itself.
Okay.
And maybe holding views that disagree with mainstream government positions, dissenting voices.
And it's not just sort of armchair researchers, is it? He mentions professionals, too.
Right. That's quite specific. He claims even people with PhDs, particularly in science and tech fields, can become targets.
If they go against the grain.
Exactly. If their research challenges mainstream academic views or, and this is key, if it potentially touches on classified government or military knowledge.
And the alleged motive there, suppression.
That's what he suggests. Suppressing breakthroughs that might conflict with existing secrets or, classified tech. He also makes a really important distinction, doesn't he, between the sort of general idea of TIs out there and the specific program he says he's whistleblowing on.
Yeah, that's crucial. He's not just talking about a vague phenomenon. He alleges a very specific operation.
Describe that operation again.
He claims it involves the actual abduction of TIs from across the country, then forcing them into homelessness in those Seattle DESC shelters he mentioned.
For experimentation.
For experimentation, yes. And then, get this, subsequently employing them at SIS.
As low-level security guards.
Right, where he claims the experimentation continues. It's a very specific, dark narrative.
And the numbers he gives are, well, they're quite large.
They are. He alleges maybe 300 to 400 people just in that downtown Seattle DESC system part of this. Then dozens of SIS employees also subjected to it. And nationwide. He estimates maybe 1 to 2 million people experiencing the full package, the tech and the gang stalking, 247.
1 to 2 million. Those are staggering figures if his account holds any water. Okay, let's dive a bit deeper into this alleged technology. He suggests it can influence emotions and behavior covertly. How? Through these wide frequency fields.
Yeah, affecting whole areas like downtown Seattle. He talks about inducing sort of collective moods or emotional states across a geographic zone.
How would that theoretically work? Could you elaborate?
Well, the idea he presents is that within those broad fields, you can overlay more specific frequencies. Frequencies tuned to target particular individuals within that zone.
Wow, so broad effects and targeted effects simultaneously.
That's the claim. He even speculates this could be used to, say, start riots or stop them, or even mess with traffic flow by subtly affecting drivers' emotions en masse.
The potential implications are just huge.
Profound, yeah.
And the mechanism he describes for how it works on an individual level, he used that analogy.
The superhighway, right. He suggests broadcast radio frequencies can somehow lock onto an individual's resonant frequency.
Their mind, body, even DNA.
That's what he claims, yes.
Yeah.
Locking on that unique frequency creates this pathway, this superhighway, for sending and receiving information directly with that person.
And through that highway, they can allegedly manipulate thoughts, emotions.
Instant voices, the voice-to-skull phenomenon, and monitor everything in real time. Thoughts, feelings, sensory input.
And he claims the inserted thoughts feel completely natural, indistinguishable.
Yes, because allegedly, they originate from the same part of the brain as your own thoughts. That's a particularly insidious detail, if true.
He gave that one really specific example involving a public figure.
Right, George W. Bush. He claimed the tech was used on him during a speech, essentially feeding him lines. It's a very bold claim.
It is. And his overall concern seems to be that Seattle in particular has become this open-air lab.
An active proving ground, yeah. Endangering the public without their knowledge. He also flags Aurora, Colorado.
Near Buckley Air Force Base.
Exactly. As another major hub for this alleged program, he says it affects military personnel there and their families, too.
And personally, he says he experienced intense stalking after deciding to speak out.
Massive organized stalking, yeah. That personal experience definitely adds another layer, another dimension to his testimony.
The role of the private security industry itself seems absolutely central here. He really emphasizes the size of it.
Yeah, estimating around 1 million personnel just in the U.S., it's huge.
And he argues this size, this structure, gives it an advantage for carrying out covert surveillance and gang stalking.
Because it operates outside of the public eye, largely, it's designed not to be noticed, unlike, say, uniformed police.
He mentioned a detail about the cars they use.
Unmarked cars, often. But sometimes, interestingly, displaying military-related stickers. Air Force, Marines.
Why? What's the alleged purpose of that?
He thinks it's psychological. To create a specific impression on the target, maybe intimidation, maybe confusion about who's behind it, it suggests calculated manipulation.
And the personnel involved. He claims many are ex-military, ex-intelligence.
Yes, a significant portion. He even suggests some might still be active, just reassigned domestically for this program.
And they deliberately hire diverse people.
To avoid creating an obvious profile, yeah. Makes the whole operation harder to spot if the personnel blend in everywhere.
Makes sense. He also described the physical appearance of the street-level people involved.
Often physically imposing, strong. Again, likely for psychological intimidation.
But there's that supposed hands-off policy.
Right. He alleges a general rule against direct physical harm, the idea being to avoid clear legal lines being crossed.
While still causing immense psychological damage.
Exactly. Inflicting distress, fear, paranoia, isolation, without leaving physical evidence. It sounds very calculated.
Okay, so how are these alleged gang stalkers recruited and kept in line? He talks about incentives.
He does. He describes things like group acceptance, feeling like you belong, financial rewards, obviously.
New cars, he mentioned. Help with education for kids.
Yeah, new vehicles, better schooling for their children, valuable connections. He paints a picture that he says is, well, similar to organized crime recruitment.
And what keeps them doing it? Especially if the targets are, as he claims, often innocent.
He alleges significant psychological manipulation of the stalkers themselves.
Using the same tech on them.
Potentially. He suggests maybe even using the same mind control tech to suppress their empathy, their conscience about what they're doing.
Wow, that's dark. The manipulators being manipulated.
It's a disturbing thought. He also talks about fostering an us versus them mentality.
How does that work?
Contrasting the benefits the gang stalkers get, the community, the rewards, with the suffering and isolation of the TIs who are deliberately dehumanized.
Classic psychological framing used in cults or extremist groups.
Pretty much. And the speaker claims the ultimate goal is, well, nationwide rollout.
Meaning?
Every American under the influence of this technology, everyone potentially just one decision away from becoming a target themselves.
He called it a control grid.
Yeah, a control grid that he says is already in place, operating remotely. It's a very bleak outlook.
Let's touch on some specific points from the Q&A part of the recording.
Yeah.
He confirmed the reason given to recruit gang stalkers.
Yeah, he confirmed the alleged premise is that the TIs are criminals. That's the justification given.
Even though he says that's usually false.
Right. So based on deception, according to him...
And the structure. Is there a command hierarchy?
He described one, a command and control structure. Supervisors coordinating the tech side and the stalking side for each target.
Did he name names?
He did. Dennis P. Hatton as a watch commander, John Spat as the CEO of SIS. He also noted it's highly compartmentalized.
Typical intel structure. Need-to-know basis.
Exactly. Based on specific assignments to maintain secrecy.
Someone asked about police stations adding mental health wings, connecting it to this.
He said he had no information on that, didn't confirm it.
What about the idea of using frequencies to cause disease? Manipulating DNA.
He acknowledged it's theoretically possible. He mentioned Amazon's research in related areas.
But it's happening now to TIs in this program.
He said he has no direct knowledge of that being implemented currently. Possible, but unconfirmed by him.
And when a listener described actual physical harm and property damage, how did he respond, given the hands-off policy claim?
He clarified, well, that policy might not always be followed. He conceded that.
And he suggested others could be involved.
Yeah, he opened the door to medical professionals potentially being complicit, even corporations, insurance companies, maybe being involved in targeting people in ways beyond just psychological stuff.
Broadening the scope significantly.
He also specifically backed up the claim about Amazon using dedicated buildings for experiments.
On their own employees and SIS employees, too.
That's what he alleged, yes. Internal experimentation.
Okay. Someone else, Karen Stewart, was mentioned regarding Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, a claim about Lockheed employing organized stalkers across dozens of states. He mentioned hearing it, but emphasized his own sources couldn't verify that specific claim.
Fair enough. What about the tech infrastructure? Where did this signal come from?
He said it uses antennas, radar systems, particularly mentioning those at military bases and standard cell phone towers.
Often camouflage.
Often camouflaged, yeah. He stressed this aspect is highly classified.
He also confirmed remote neural monitoring is part of it. Reading thoughts.
Yes, he said that's a key function, reading thoughts remotely. He also mentioned some slang used inside SIS, like hive mind and voice to skull.
Internal jargon. Does he have proof? Documentation.
He stated he intends to release documents eventually, but he's hesitant right now, citing potential legal action against him.
But he's willing to testify.
Yes, he expressed willingness to testify in legal proceedings against the program or the government.
And finally, he confirmed he's a victim himself.
He did. He stated he's personally targeted by V2K and other aspects. He described his own experience as being hit with a very advanced, beta version of the tech.
And he shared examples of the V2K messages.
Yeah, things like threats, attempts to sow discord between him and his contacts. And he talked about using his own counter-surveillance training to try and fight back against it psychologically.
So his personal experience is clearly a huge driver for him.
Absolutely. It frames his entire perspective. So, wrapping things up, we've really just unpacked this detailed account from a former security insider. His allegations about this huge, tech-driven social engineering program, well, they're extensive.
And the claims themselves are, frankly, profoundly unsettling. You think about the alleged use of mind control tech, systematic gangstalking, the potential scale he describes.
It raises massive questions, doesn't it, about individual liberty, oversight government, private industry, and just the ethics of where technology is heading.
We understand that hearing this might be deeply concerning for you. It could bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of questions.
Definitely.
So perhaps it prompts some critical thinking. Thinking about technology's deepening role in our lives, the power these private industries hold, and fundamentally, the importance of informed consent.
Yeah, and consider his call for more public awareness, maybe even legal action, as things to reflect on.
And maybe we leave you with this final thought to mull over. In a world that's getting more and more technologically integrated every single day, how do we actually guarantee the protection of our own thoughts, our mental autonomy?
What does it mean if our innermost thoughts, our feelings, could potentially be subject to outside manipulation? It's a heavy question.